Hello, everyone, and welcome to another wonderful round of our article and an app series here at Westcliff University, our reading club that we do once a month here together, going over an article, sharing some ideas around an app. And as you know, if you've been here before or if you've watched one of these before, this is an offering that is a collaboration between the Professional Development Department and the Light Center Library Department. And our aim is to share at least one article, at least one app, usually more, every month for this series that we are bringing to you here in 2024. Your engagement and feedback is greatly appreciated. And with that in mind, I want to make sure that I do share with you here, as I always like to do at the start of our sessions, our survey. So you don't have to take it right now. Obviously, you just got here, but please do open that up. Make sure that you complete that for us. Your feedback is so very important. I'm also going to pop into the chat the link for the article this month. And as you know, if we've met, my name is Joni Mitchell. I'm the Professional Development Specialist over in the PD Center. Let's see. I want to start with introductions. I think most of us here today know each other, but I always like to do a quick introduction. You're welcome to unmute yourself. You can also pop it in the chat. I always like name, department, and how long have you been with us at Westcliff University? Feel free to share a fun fact that's not on the list. Again, my name is Joni Mitchell. I am in the Light Center Professional Development Office. I have been with Westcliff since last August, coming up on a year. So let's see over in the chat. Dr. Constance says, happy Tuesday. I hope everyone had a great Memorial Day. Indeed, hopefully you had a little rest, a little reflection. It's always a great way to start our summer. Dr. Lipo says, myself, far too long. Yes, you did a little bit of everything, don't you? Dr. Johnson said 7 years. 7 years here at Westcliff. Awesome.
And we have the bad luck.
And we, yeah, oh, love it. Dr. Constance said COE. Thank you, yes, for joining us. And you're on your 5th year. Oh, I didn't know that. Ooh, half a decade. That means half a decade. All right, I do see a couple more people there. Hopefully you'll pop into the chat. So I always like to start with this opening. Again, there's our article. Oh, good. Dr. Morgan said he joined us back in November 2023. Yes, wonderful to have you here, Dr. Morgan. I was actually the one who hosted your new faculty orientation, so it's wonderful to see you again here. And Seitha, wonderful to have you here. Just 2 months. College of Technology. Yes, how is it going over there in COTE? Lots going on. And James, my buddy over in academic operations, 3rd year here at Westcliff. We love having you here. And Dr. Morgan said he's in the School of Business and Technology. Yes, James, thank you, James. I can remember where you were before you were with academic operations. So formerly career services.
Just stating it for the record.
For the record, yes. New-ish to academic operations. What, 4 months? With over there in AO, as I like to call you guys, the AO department.
The AO team.
The AO team. I don't feel like it's catching on. I've been trying to get Dr. Rosner to use that more. We'll see.
He'll come around.
He'll come around. All right, thoughts on the article. Come on, I know you have some. Opening thoughts. Just pop it there for you.
In short,
yes,
the
or long.
Best response I could give you is
okay. I don't need more context because I feel like I could take that like positively. Like it could be like a Bugs Bunny one, or it could be like a scary Ghostbusters one, like the 1980s Ghostbuster, not like the ones now.
Yeah, it's like here and it goes around and it comes back.
I kind of saw it veering around. I felt like so one thing to think about is this article was from November of 2023. I mean, as I'm researching this, AI in higher education, it's something I've been very passionate about since last year. Really excited that we've been asked by administration to kind of jump into this more. And, one thing I notice is it changes like every week. Every week I'm seeing, like new information and what about this and what about this and this tool. And I've gotten myself into, I don't know about you all, but I've gotten myself into a lot of professional groups and we are talking about this every week, if not every single day. We're sharing things on WhatsApp, we're sharing things on LinkedIn. And it's exciting, but it is all over the place. And so I feel like as educators, this is just me. I'm like this, trying to grasp it all and figure it all out. And then on top of it, I have students who have a one-track mind with it, right? Copy and paste, right? I don't know if that's y'all's experience. And so what I liked about this article was that it kind of starts the dialogue around, okay, how can we use this as educators in the classroom to start showing our students to think critically, to share ideas,
It's been very difficult because, like you said, the students are not. I don't see a lot of examples, even in the real world, where people are working with it. They either take this is what AI said, and we're going to do it, or they're. So we don't see a lot of even let's say collaboration with it, because it mentions many of the faults that we're seeing. And even when we have our faculty lounge, we have those who are so pro AI on everything, but they don't see any of the ethical parts with it. They never consider the ethics of it. They're like, it can do this, it can do this. Well, what about this? There's and it forces groups into people who are they're like, even people like myself. I'm not a naysayer, but I get pushed over there because I've got certain people that are just so pro AI is the best everything. There's no fault with it. We can do this, we can do this, we can do this. But I actually see critical thinking substantially reduced because it's letting the AI do the critical thinking.
Yeah.
And this has been a problem not just here. And what people don't realize is that if you let AI do your work, AI is going to do your work, and why would I need you? It just becomes more of that. I've been, over the last couple of months, increasingly disturbed by the incorrect information, the fact that it can't do math, and the fact that it will fabricate things. I showed on a thread a couple of faculty that I asked a question, and it said, well, that was discussed in an article in the Journal of Behavior, whatever. I go, can you give me the article? Well, I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood. I said, you said there was an article. What was the article? I said, did you make that up?
Yeah.
Did you lie? And it said, yes. It's like, okay, AI is openly telling me it lied and made things up. Now
Gemini,
think about it. If that was a person, let's say we're working as a group, and you had somebody in a group that knowingly lied to you, what would you do with that person in that group? What would you do with that student? What would you do with anything like that? They would be omitted from the group. They would get an F for the paper. They would be ostracized for manufacturing something that doesn't even exist. You cited something that you said something exists that didn't, or like when it does come up with citations, they don't work. By the way, that's also a clue for teachers to make sure that they include the DOI on stuff. It seems like
it makes up DOIs now. Careful now.
The chat DOT,
Careful now.
they're behind it in that. So they'll put. I had one student that all 5 DOIs, none that they provided, none of them went to the article.
Nothing.
So it's frustrating because
AI
now
knows to make a DOI. Like it knows not to use Smith and Johnson anymore as last names. Yeah. Last year when I was getting fake citations, references, it was all Smith and Jay and Bob and Johnson, and now it knows to make up some nice names, getting real diversity of the names.
And our students don't care about, and most of our students don't care. They just want an A. They honestly, the vast majority of them, they just want an A and they don't care. And then they'll complain about the AI detectors and, they're not 100% accurate. Well, yeah, okay, but you're at 99% AI written or 100% AI written. So spare me. Because the one part, and one thing that I will say about Professor Lipo, this has been his champion for as long as I've known him.
Mm-hmm.
Good writing helps critical thinking. That you can't separate writing from thinking. And that's always been, to his credit, that's always been something he's championed. Well, if you can't write, if you're going to let AI do your writing for you, you're also missing that part of critical thinking. Because I'm seeing very little good critical thinking now compared to, say, 3 years ago.
Yeah,
That's me. That's what my class is.
And ethics and critical thinking go hand in hand. If you're not thinking critically, you won't have good ethics.
Right.
So, I mean, it all goes together, and it depends who is doing the thinking here. If it's the AI is doing the thinking, it will be flawed. If it's the human doing the thinking, it could still be flawed. It all depends on where you're getting your information and questioning. Even, I don't care who produced the work, whether it's in peer reviewed in the Journal of American Medicine or on ProQuest, question it. There's no harm in doing that. You question to understand. That's all part of critical thinking.
Yes,
Johnson said they're not even reading what they're posting. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think if we come up with a way to teach the student how to use the AI ethically. I mean, they think they know how to use AI to generate the work for them, but we need to tune this down to, okay, let's make the AI organize your thinking and make it like it's. I think if the AI was there when we were studying and preparing our challenges and whatever, we will use it the same way they do. Okay, let me generate the whole things and I'll sit and relax. But the reality is we need the AI to organize their thinking. AI is a handy library, a handy tool that we were driving hours to reach to that library to open that book and get that statement from it. But for us right now, if we can manage to put a tutorial for our student how to use AI ethically and efficiently, so you, instead of getting 0 for 100% AI generated, you get 100% for very well organized and very well satisfying paper. I think the challenge in front of us right now, and I'm putting it in the front of the team, let's work on something tutorial. Hey student, watch this video and this video will help you utilize AI without getting penalized for being lazy.
We actually, Jody and I did that.
Beautiful.
We visited, it was all the pro weekend students went through this training, and then we did it with undergraduates. We did provide them with this education. It is a tool, just like anything else.
Can you kindly, sir, share it with me? So I would love to see it and share it with my student if they claim that they forgot it or they didn't get it.
We'll try to find the whole thing was like 3 hours long. So
yeah, I was in that. It was so good. It was so good. It was, obviously watching it from Zoom, I lost some of the context, but I could see what you were doing. And I think you make a really good point, Professor Baruti, because I think that needs to be consistently taught. I'm finding that the materials that that campuses are giving students, they need it. It needs to start being part of every aspect, and we're getting there, right? Like these things take time. It's not train them once, there it is, now they know. It's how are we incorporating that into our classes, how are we incorporating it into our teaching, how are we incorporating it into our rubrics, how are we incorporating it into our department. Like it takes time, and AI is moving so fast. But I really love some of the points here, and I think that, just so you know, I am like putting some notes here because the Light Center does collaborate a lot across our departments.
To be
It's really
honest,
important.
really, to be honest, that it is hard for the student to resist that. Here's something can write the whole article for me, that it can do
Yes.
everything for me, but I'm not allowed to use. Let me try to see how far So from the very first week, I have I do, and I think it's working. Like I have zero tolerance for AI generated. You can have up to, let's say, 30% or whatever. Anything beyond that, you're gonna be penalized for it, okay? Do not let AI do. But how hard it is for them to resist such a temptation that somebody can do it for me and I will get some, I may fly with it, right?
Except that what we're seeing is it can't do it for you.
I'm sorry?
It can't do everything for you, though.
And
This
it also
is something that our
assumption
students need
is,
to
their
learn.
assumption is.
it
Right.
also
This is
depends. It depends on your motivation. If your motivation is just to get a grade so that you can earn the degree, you're going to do whatever it is, use whatever cheating just to get that diploma.
I love
You know,
this.
you said something. If it was around when we were growing up, I would let it. I would not have, because we did have things like that. One of them was called Course Hero, which has been, one of my battles, my Don Quixote battle. But no, I didn't use any of that. It was always but that's my motivation, my ethos, my ethics. And I don't think many of the students have that same either tenacity or drive. They're not motivated by what the work is going to do for them. They're motivated by the result.
Do you think this problem is unique to us in Westcliff?
No.
Or
No,
not at all.
Sir,
no. If I may, Dr.
Definitely not.
There was somebody, I know somebody in Washington. They were, how like when you do your dissertation defense, it's pretty much a rubber stamping, right? I mean, you're just going through it. You can tell the person didn't really know the subject. And when they put it through a filter, it was like 90% AI written. So the person got all the way with an approved dissertation. And then that person got kicked out of school. They went all that way, didn't bother doing any of the work.
Professor Crawford here. Oh, she couldn't make it, looks like. Our librarian, similar thing. We've had stories of Westcliff students getting really far, and I've been on some capstone committees. Same thing. Students get really far, 4 years, 6 years towards their degree, and get to that last phase, and somebody really checks it and really looks at it and says, actually, where did you get these arguments from? And do you see here where we had an incident for another campus that I work for, just one little paragraph that was clearly generated by AI, and it just caused the whole group 4 people to go in and start really looking at the student's work. And of course, the student was offended. I'm going to sue the institution. I'm going to, all the things you've heard that are happening. That student did it. Prove it to us. We don't have to prove it to you. So I understand that Westcliff, the Light Center does have a really great training in Acorn. I'll share the link with you shortly, where we talk about the policy for Westcliff. And so I know that this is not the policy for those of you in the room, but there are sometimes conversations where it's kind of appropriate to just tell the student, I'm the AI checker. I'm the critical thinking checker. I'm the one looking at your work and saying if it's good enough. I don't necessarily need a machine to tell me. Obviously, you're not going to just zero out the paper in that instance, but you're going to go through the process and you're going to point out to them, the fact that they use the word highlight 16 times in a page and it doesn't highlight the need for whatever XYZ, right? So I definitely think all these issues are really important. I just want to kind of go into the chat too as well. You know, the fact that, you know, this is kind of causing, there's a bit of a divisive nature of like, do we use it, do we not? You know, are we, you know, how are we incorporating in our teaching methods the ethical use of it? Because it's here. And are we finding those ways to do that? I think that that's really a really good point that I think Dr. Johnson and Professor Lipo you brought up. And then also, what kind of tools are we giving our students so that they can know the difference? Over in the chat, I just want to share a couple of comments here. Dr. Johnson said they just look at it in regard to punishment. If there's no punishment, they will not change. And so that's, you know, what's the recourse, right? We have to remember the majority of our students are there because they have to, not because they want to. It goes back to motivation, right? They're not using it for help with concepts, but for help for thinking for them. And many of them do not care. Professor Money said part of the issue is that the education has become transactional in many ways. Learning the sake of learning becomes becoming rather old-fashioned. First, I'm not saying it should be policy, but I can imagine how this would change if the first time they were given a 0, they were expelled. Fear is the greatest motivator. You know, would be nice. And then of course, Cliff Notes. Yes, we go back. Does anybody want to admit by like show of hands, maybe like way back in your first year undergrad, using one of those tools? All of you are like,
honestly
never
not.
used anything. I always wrote everything ethically. Okay,
I
that's fine.
honestly did not. It was all mine, and I regret it.
I'll admit that I use Cliff Notes.
Credit.
I I thought Cliff Notes was a great way to build on my own understanding, to go over things that I or the teacher may have missed, and it helped me to develop a more thorough understanding of some of literature's classics. Lit major here.
I was gonna say you and I have share English degrees, share English undergrads,
Well,
and not only
there's
did I
always
use
been
Cliff
that.
Notes. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
There's always been like different forms of fraud. I mean, we you know we have turned it in, which really helped us a lot for the just copy and paste
Copy and
things. But
pasting.
as it is, one of the things that still goes on is completely invalid citations. That's one of the things that helps with the DOI is that I can just click onto it and look at the article. I don't have to spend as much time on it because I had one student that she's actually in her capstone class for MBA, and her project was leather accessories, and it was kind of like you said. What happened was one of the citations was from the Journal of Entomology, and it was like the leather jackets from that article were the bug, had nothing to do with leather goods. Complete fact. So now, okay, you've lied to me on this. Then I started looking up all the articles, and they were all crap. Nothing they said was valid. It would be like if I said, you know, Tim Cook said this for Apple. You look at the article, Tim Cook's not mentioned, Apple's not mentioned, nothing's mentioned on it. So they'll look for titles of stuff so it looks like it's support, when in reality it's just bogus. They didn't spend any time on it. I mean, we've always had that issue, especially like in the past before computers. I mean, you couldn't tell who was going to plagiarize something or not. We just didn't have any, and nothing was electronic. Everything was pen and paper. Now, we also didn't have the wherewithal to be able to copy and paste as much either. So that kind of goes hand
Could
in
you
hand.
imagine taking all your papers to the library and looking up all the articles and books to check the references?
So, you know, that's the idea of where we took something good. Now we have electronic articles and so forth. We can do a lot of research, and yet the evil of it, the unethical use of the same thing. It's just been difficult for this particular technology because, you know, as it is, you guys know what happened with Gemini and that disaster, how everybody on the planet is apparently at least half African American. We use a picture of Napoleon, a picture of George Washington. So that's like, that's
Google
like
it if you haven't seen this. It's a good example.
Yeah, it's terrible. And so now I don't trust it. And then just go using it myself, I'm like, Jesus, why would anybody use this? it's bad. But when if the students are doing it or using it, it's just very difficult for us to trace as much because the detectors. It's like, like at least with turning in, we could see all the different things. Like, if it's only 18%, but if it's all course zero, that's a bigger alarm than anything else. We can see that right now. I mean, and I feel sorry for the people at Grammarly because Grammarly is a good tool, but if you use it, the AI detectors can't tell the difference between that and any other AI written stuff. It just comes up as AI. There's no ability to trace the different types of AI that did that. You mentioned before, like I had a Korean student. She used to write her stuff in Korean, then use a translator. But now it's an AI translator. So now now it comes up on a flag it didn't used to. Same thing with Grammarly. It didn't used to not come up, but now they're all AI powered, so they all
But
come up. So
there's a way to
frustrating.
still use Grammarly and not have it flagged in your paper, is that you have your paper, you run one through Grammarly, and then instead of just accepting everything in the Grammarly version, you actually physically type it in your original paper, make those changes. There are no flags. There are nothing to set off the alarms.
Is there, to be devil's advocate, is there a way that a bad guy can still use it and get around it? You would know better. I'm asking because I had no idea.
There's always a possibility. I mean, and anyone wants to do it hard enough, they can. I mean, think about all the people who sat there and did a find and replace for the blank space between words and replaced them with a lowercase x in white font. That's a ridiculous amount of work just to not write a paper.
At some point, it becomes they want to challenge themselves about how to beat the system. I mean, that becomes a triumph in itself.
But what's funny about what he's saying is not only is it done, but they're too stupid to know that if you get something that's like I have templates. You have 0 turned it in score 0. That just becomes bordering on the impossible. There's just got to be something. I mean, even if it's just required to use the templates, the title page has something. But when they come back with zeros, it's pretty funny.
You remember
Look at all the effort, though, like he said, though, the effort and time to do that just to cheat.
Remember, Dr. Johnson, like years ago, like when I submitted to you a student that put a photo of the article. So the photo of the article, the Turnitin doesn't read the photo. So it passed. Like, remember that guy?
Yeah, I do. That's why I'm glad the university switched that they have to submit doc or .docx, because that at least eliminated that problem of it. Yeah, I remember that.
So we have, I think, like based on this discussion, I think we have 2 dimensions, at least for now. One dimension is the motivation of the student. And I don't know if we can, maybe I'm open like to think that we may or we may not have anything to do with it, or we may not be able to do anything to motivate the student if, as you mentioned, Doctor, that they have to be in that class. The second dimension, which is our education to the student, like what is the proper, more safe, or that the ethical way of using these tools. And if we educate them, at least we can eliminate the honest mistake that they can do. And they are always claiming, I have a student right now appealing, giving him 0 for 100% AI, saying like, oh, I didn't use it. Well, the judge between me and the student is that score on the corner of the Turnitin. If we can educate the students on the proper use of these tools, I will be very, very happy, at least to eliminate the good intention versus the bad intention.
Let me give you an example. In the training we did with the students, the various groups, we told them, you can use it to organize your thoughts, create outlines, etc. And then you write, it will break it out in a logical order for you. And then you use that to create your paragraphs and sections. And then I had a student who created the outline and then had the AI use the outline to write the paper. I said, no, you flipped it. It's backwards. It creates the outline. You create the words because it has to be your thoughts. That's how you learn. You take stuff in, you internalize it, you kick it back out, not regurgitation because that's copy and paste, but in your own thoughts. Now it's or mostly your own thoughts. Now it's a paraphrase, but that whole process is the learning process. Otherwise, you're not learning. You can't apply it. You can't explain it. And that's why they fall apart when you start asking questions.
Really good comments in the chat. Thank you, Professor Lipo. That's 100. Everything you said. I really appreciate the insights into what we're starting to introduce students to. We know that the majority of our students still have not done that training, may not necessarily have access to that training. So, you know, please don't think that every student now knows that. You may still have some good intentioned students, some well-intentioned students. You may still have students whose first language is not English, that are trying to use it to sound more academic or more professional. You know, and that's, or, you know, I always kind of get flagged for, you know, being a little hard on students who come from cultures where copying the master is the ideal. And so the fact that they can go into AI and take a paragraph from it and it sounds so much better, you know, it really does reiterate the need to meet with the student, to talk to the student, to show them exactly where they're not showing their thinking and their learning. And it takes time. So I hop over to the chat. I'm not gonna read the whole thing. There's a whole straight here. Jocelyn, thank you for that question. Where do y'all stand on AI paraphrasers? Really good comments in there. Thank you, Professor Money, Professor Lebo, for sharing some thoughts on that. And this actually kind of relates. I'm going to skip over to, just for the sake of time. If you do have a chance, go back and look at the article. There is a really great, I think it's a great activity to kind of get you to maybe start thinking about how you can incorporate AI if you want to in your course, or in your lessons, or when you meet with students, and start to kind of play with this idea of how are we showing our students that it cannot think for you. It cannot do that part that is so critical to them being here, whether it's their personal reason for being here or not. That's what it comes down to.
But one final thing, and it's
Yes.
not necessarily off topic.
No, go ahead.
It doesn't matter, and it's why, you know, there is some gray area still, even though it might say like 30%. There is so much that is in these AI database now.
Yes, thank you.
That you're gonna get some, even if you've never used it. I guarantee you, I have never used it for my dissertation, but I'm sure 40% of it will come up because there are things that have been talked about and written about by other people that were put in there.
Really important
that
to remember.
had nothing to do with me.
Yeah, you know, the GPT part of ChatGPT, it is generative, but it's also pre-trained. So all those articles, all the language, all the information that it is sharing or it's trying to put together for someone who's using those tools, it's coming from somewhere. So I've actually had students who learn how to use it really well for discussion board pieces, and you know, they're not copying and pasting, but they are kind of taking some of the ideas. But then when we go back and we, you know, they're not able to do those same things in their, you know, like oral presentations or things like that, right? Because they're not allowed to read. And so, you know, again, we're, you know, trying to find different ways to measure learning as well. But yeah, there's a really good chance sometimes that you can get a student who has some percentage in there. It's not the end all be all, but again, yeah, 0% when it shouldn't be 0%. Also, that's a good point. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What really will help me really is to understand how Turnitin is working. Like, what are they looking for? Are they matching it, or there is some code in the copy and paste they detect, or some type of font or some type of spacing. How they figure it out, that I don't know. If anybody can educate me on this side.
The best I've been
Anybody?
told is that that when you copy from, whether it be Grammarly or a translation or ChatGPT or any of these other sources, there are often, they're hidden. We can't see them, but it's in the text itself. And when you plunk it into Word again, we still can't see it, but the algorithms in the sources can. You know, to our eyes, it looks the same, but to the systems, it can read it differently. You know, we might not know the difference between a couple of the different fonts, but it translates. It's also happening when students copy and paste, say from want of a better reference, Course Hero. The text is going to be slightly off because they don't highlight everything and make it all the same. Course Hero also got sued and had to change how they did the citations in text. And so those come out different now. And so, you know, it's just these little things that we might not be able to see clearly, but to the systems that are far more sensitive than we are, they can. That's
So
the
Yeah,
best explanation I can give.
to
that's really
follow up
good.
on this explanation, Professor Lepore, so should we assume that the tool that we're using right now is 100% accurate? Because the student always make me doubt that they swear in everything they believe in, that it is, they never used it. So I start, is that system accurate or not? Is that report is accurate or not? Can somebody please help me on that one?
It's, you know, it's hard to say. My best advice that I give to every faculty member: ask them questions about what they wrote. If they can respond intelligently without reading from their paper, they learned something. They can carry on that conversation. It's the same as them reading it, internalizing it, and kicking back out something on paper. But if all they can do is read from what they wrote, there's no learning.
I can put their article in ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to give me questions that in testing them.
But you know, it's the
Good, and you
topic
can
that
actually take it over
you're,
to
as the
Gemini.
faculty member, you should know this. And so you can ask them questions. So how did they come up with this idea? You know, where did they see it? Because in say that process or that field of work, this has never been successful, yet they're saying it's successful. You know, you key right in on, okay, well, how did you do this? You know, it is difficult. You know, the ones that are the highest numbers are definitely, you know, fully on in there. But again, you can get, you know, just for an example, I've had papers, and I'm just talking about the turned in similarity portion now, that were 58% similarity but zero plagiarism because of title pages and the way they used returns to go from the conclusion to the reference page. But if you put a hard page break after the conclusion, it understands that what follows is references and doesn't count them. There's little things along the way that make all these differences, but it's a matter of, you know, understanding how the whole thing works. And if they are learning and they can understand it and they can respond to questions, which is what they're going to be asked to do in a business. Here's my report, boss. Okay, explain it to me. It's all right there in writing. Do it again, is what the boss will say.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think we could do a whole we have and we will continue to do training series around Turnitin, because there's so many nuanced things in Turnitin. You know, one of my favorites is I still have students who pull a paper from Course Hero. They're using much fancier text regenerating software, and it's actually not coming out as garbage anymore. But there'll be 1 or 2 lines, and my students will, this is actually for campus, that they can see their Turnitin score. So if you're over in the chat, James is asking about that. How do you all feel about students seeing their AI scores? But my students can see their score. And so the students question why I look at their papers, even though they only have a 5%, a 10% score. I thought 30% was what it needed to be below, Professor Mitchell. I thought 20% was what it needed to be below. But I can pull those papers up and I can look at the source in mine, and I can see that it's line by line the same ideas. All they did was run it through and regurgitate it in a different way. They've shown me that they've learned nothing, that none of the ideas. I even had a had a female student talk about being a white male. Fun times. So, you know, there's just those things where we just, as professors, we do have to go in and we have to do some of that digging, and it can be time consuming sometimes. But really good tips. I just want to pop in there real quick. Let's see. Oh, let me catch up on the chat for those of you. Jocelyn shared. Okay, so yes, James asked, would it be beneficial to see Turnitin score, their AI score for Turnitin, for students to be able to see that? I have mixed feelings on that. You all could definitely share your insights, what you think. I think in some instances it actually teaches them how to get better at going in and changing 5 or 10 words. I find that with all similarity reports, but that's just my personal experience. Jocelyn said, I had to bring AI misunderstandings to people's attention while not in the classroom, for example. On Teams, while she was on FLA, my team was relying on AI generated meeting notes. We love Zoom meetings. We love the Zoom bots, right? Well, it didn't get some of the details right, and no one went back to look at it. And fact check it. Yeah, send those meeting notes to each other. Is this what we talked about? Does this sound right? Does this have any tone? AI has bias, right? One of the things I'm working with my students on is for the AI to catch the bias. Read that transcript through, make sure that these are actually our next steps. Is this really what we talked about? Is this what you meant? Is this what I meant? We really have to get there. James, what did you share in the chat there? Oh, Justin.
The YouTube link to a segment on artificial intelligence by Last Week Tonight.
John Oliver.
John
Yes.
Oliver. It was a really good piece where one of the things that they mentioned was the black box of AI and how they don't really know how it works, as well as the drift and how it gets worse over time. But some really good information in there. No, just
excellent.
on topic,
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go
I
ahead and pop into the chat. Jocelyn. Oh, sorry.
No,
I
go
barely
ahead.
hear you, James.
Oh, I just want, sorry, I have
Yes,
like
please.
homework happening.
Yes.
Like 81, 82. So, just to Dave, to answer your question, one of the things that I do with the Opium Wars is to discuss bias, right? And to discuss like perspective, like what language is being used to discuss the event, right? So yes, like totally will completely 100% fact check GPT's summary to know what it got right, what it didn't. But more to the point, what I think students also like don't acknowledge or even recognize is that like you said, there's bias, right? Like it uses how it frames it is in and of itself like knowledge construction. And so if you like, part of the discipline of history is to kind of break that down and look at like, okay, what language is being used, you know, in terms of the Opium Wars, because I guarantee you how it presents in our textbooks is not how the Chinese see it. And so if you had to like rewrite it from the Chinese perspective, you know, how would that look? What kind of language would they be using? And I'm interested to see how AI can be manipulated to present different versions of history. And do my students even recognize, or do they red flag that like, this feels like something we should investigate. So I don't know, I'm currently still like trying to figure out how to, I mean, there's almost too many possibilities for how to use this. You know, I don't want to like go down the rabbit hole, but I want them to see that what they produce is with AI, like isn't just something that you can just take at face value, but that it's going to communicate something about who they are. It's going to communicate something about like, it's going to communicate a political stance. It's going to communicate a set of values. It's going to communicate all these other things that are subtext to what it is that they're actually saying about X event. You know, but Dave, just to go back like way back in the chat, like, you know, about AIs like lying to you and making up sources or using sources, you know, students using sources that are only like related to the topic by like a similar word. I had a student develop their final paper using ChatGPT. It gave them credible sources that were actually real. It didn't hallucinate the existence of these articles, but none of their articles actually talked about their topic. It simply had some common language. And so like they based everything off of this ChatGPT like thing with these resources, and then it like spiraled out. I didn't even like fail them for for plagiarism or having an AI generated paper because I didn't need to. Because once you don't have sources, once you don't have credible sources, once you know, like everything else falls apart. So I don't know, like ChatGPT got clever in that it like didn't hallucinate for them, but like, my goodness, it was a history paper by a 100 level course, and all of a sudden they're citing like forensic science. It just doesn't jive,
I love
you know?
that. Yeah, that's, you know, okay. I want to just make sure I'm minding the chat and minding what you're saying. Absolutely. And this all kind of, it's actually comes back to what you and Professor Money were talking about as well. You know, we know that it's lying. I was in a group with some professors who were talking about it's like a bad customer service agent. It's like, I'm just going to give you a really solid answer so you'll leave me alone, even though it's totally not true. And it's even been proven. Yes, I've actually read studies, I don't have them right now to cite, that it knows when it's lying and it just wants to be able to give you something. And that's actually with all three of these. So then maybe you're asking yourself, well, why is the professional development office asking me to dive in and use these apps? Well, here's why, because we need to know this, what Professor Sorensen is saying about, you know, what are our students using them for? Dr. Sorensen, I don't know if you saw, I don't think it was you I was talking to some months ago. The World Economic Forum has an Instagram page, and they keep getting dinged for using AI because they have these opinion pieces that are absolutely opinion, but they report it like it's an actual study sometimes, because sometimes they have some studies in there. And they had one last week that was like the top 10 universities in Asia, and 8 out of 9 were in China. Nothing from Korea, none from Japan. It was like China, 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 Singapore, China, China. And we were like, okay, really, who generated this list and what are you basing it on? And then somebody had to come and say, yeah, it was AI. Sorry, we were just trying to make some content for you all. So how have you used it? We just had a really great example. How have you been using it? How are you interested in using these tools? How has it changed your daily teaching practices other than getting in that Turnitin report? Oh, and I did pop in the chat also for anybody interested in the Acorn, our new LMS Acorn, the webinar recording for the Turnitin policy. So that actually, Professor Crow did a really great job outlining the steps that you will want to take from the institutional perspective for, you know, using Turnitin, for reporting students. It doesn't go deeply into Turnitin. We have some other tools in there for you to learn more about using Turnitin. But definitely, you know, it does come down, like Professor Lipo was saying earlier, to having conversations with the students. So talking about AI use, talking about the app use itself. How are you using it, either in your classes or outside of your classes? How's it going? do you see yourself incorporating this more into your classes intentionally or and having intentional conversations?
I haven't
Yeah,
figured out a way to incorporate it. I'll be honest. You know, as far as I've used it in one course we went on a discussion about ideation and how to
Mhm.
use it. Because again, there's figuring out how some sort of almost collaborative work that, you know, the idea that it can produce things. Because even in that article, um, it mentioned, where is it? There was a few different things they showed. Oh yeah, it said that they had a table there evaluating the ideas suggested of ways of improving the idea. That was part of it. Provided advice on idea creation and improvement process. So there is that. It's not all negative. It just seems like we kind of hyperly adapted something that has a lot of flaws, and we haven't really taken the negative into account as much as we should, um, more than anything else. Because it did mention it had some negatives in there too about it, you know, as far
Yeah,
as
some ethical
falsifying.
concerns in the article for sure.
Yeah,
It talked a lot about obviously what we go through, students using that generated text too heavily. It talked about issues of data privacy. Um,
yeah,
you know, even if your student is sharing ideas that are not from the articles that they go ahead and post in there, they're sharing somebody's ideas, right? And so then, you know, how are we finding it? Sorry, Professor Liebel, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, the whole thing that Jody and I did stemmed from a discussion question that I put in a course that, you know, the students had to write something. And then they looked up that same information in whatever tool they wanted to, and then they did a compare and contrast. That was the impetus for what we did. And we can still do that while you're in class today. Have this group look up this, you know, in non-AI. You have to be specific about it, or, you know, in the textbook or whatever. And then either the same or a different group does it in the different AI tools, Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever. And then you compare and contrast, and we can help the students build their critical thinking through that process. You know, then they start to see the errors and the problems with it. And it's going to take a while for not only to get through all the students, but, you know, you have to think about all the different colleges, and every university is dealing with this same. When we did this presentation at WASC, we got badgered with questions like, you know, same things that we're talking about. It's not unique, and everyone is grappling with this. And it just, unfortunately, the more we show them how it does not work properly, then I think you'll have the outliers who will continue to cheat with it, just like you do with everything else. But the more they're aware of the flaws, the more they'll not be as interested in using it. You know, it's just like Course Hero. You pull a paper from Course Hero and use it. I guarantee you it's not an A paper, because the people who wrote their own papers don't sell them.
Don't want to put them up there. Yep.
You know, it's usually the C and D papers.
Because they want to get credits to get other papers from Course Hero. So they're like, oh
Yeah.
yes, I'll upload my garbage so I can download some other garbage to turn in and not do my work. Absolutely true. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
pity the
That
poor
goes.
people that use the ones that I uploaded just to see
Mhm.
if anyone would use them, because they are garbage.
I've done that with discussion posts. It's been very interesting. I don't see too much Course Hero anymore, but Professor, Dr. Johnson, this goes back to your question here. Why are we embracing something? Dr. Shorten says it's a fine line to walk between being part of the vanguard in tech use and holding these cutting edge technologies to a critical view. And I feel like that's what's so important about us having this conversation in academia. It's not just, are we passing our students? Are they still getting degrees? Are they going out to the world? if we do not be the voice of reason, I mean, I've seen news anchors who are, clearly reading from some ChatGPT output. I've received emails. There's a question in the chat about getting emails that are, I've gotten emails that are just way too flowery, clearly not just written by ChatGPT, but not edited. They're not, students aren't going back through them. Individuals who are sending them, not just students, individuals are not going back through them. And if we are not at a part of this conversation and a part of this process, it is very scary to me. You know, what can happen with it. And I like to see that we can make an impact if our students go out into the world. And there's an interesting report from CompTIA, I think it was, about the amount of, let's see if I can find it. Let's see, Dr. Johnson said, I am not a techie, but I'm surprised just how much bias there is in those results. Absolutely. And good, I asked why to include that good example there. And it admits it. I made a mistake. Oh, I misspoke. Oh, I'm so sorry. Play with the apps and you can actually see it. You can have a full conversation. Dr. Johnson said we have 100 administrators at Westcliff that embraces 100%. We're recording this session, y'all. Okay, so again, please do our survey. We need to wrap up here. Always, as always, we want to think about the Capri framework. How are we applying this use, and you're not muted, on the, applied? Are we making our learning relevant? Learning how to use AI tools in the classroom and continuing this dialogue on how there are options, there's are possibilities. Even looking at the bias of language, like Dr. Sorensen was talking about, creating that inclusive environment, and pointing out to students how much bias is in these tools. As a reminder, please do complete the Light Center Reading Club survey. Your feedback is so valuable to us. It helps us plan our offerings. It helps us gain campus support for the initiatives that we need to have to enhance your professional growth. And that is what we're here for. That is the purpose that we serve. And of course, we want our programs to all have an impact. Last couple minutes here, I just want to let you know about some upcoming events because we are so excited about June. Please be on the lookout for the professional learning community coming in July. There's going to be a survey coming out. I'd really love to see everybody take part in that survey. It's going to be on active learning. This first professional learning community will be on active learning, and we are really going to be diving in. But we need that commitment, and we need to know who wants to be part of it. So please take our survey. Let us know what you think. Coming up in just a couple days, 2 days from now, we are going to be talking about incorporating videos into the classroom teaching. Now, this is our first 30-minute tip of the month. You can catch it from 8 to 8:30. One starting at 8, one starting at 12 for just a half an hour. Please do join us. You can find out more about that in Acorn or in your calendar invitations. And then also coming up in June 13th is going to be our next 30-minute Save It Before You Leave. We've got a lot of questions a couple webinars ago about exit tickets, how to use them, what are they. We're going to be giving you a 30-minute tip of the month here in a couple weeks. And we'll also be talking about flipping the classroom in June. So lots of really great stuff coming up. And of course, our June article in the app, next one will be at 11 a.m. We're going to continue this AI discussion. We're going to talk about prompt writing. And I want you guys to try out some of these general ones. We're going to look at some tools. I know, I've got some, I don't want to be divisive. I keep using the word divisive. People say it's divisive. The word is divisive, Joni. Okay, fine. I don't want to be divisive, but I got to tell you, I want us to try it out. Try out these tools. We're going to look at prompt writing. Please take our survey. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will go ahead and stop sharing. And if there's no other comments or questions, you will have a great evening. Thank you so much. Take care.